Thank you for joining us for the fifth of our Work Study Primer series. This entry is on interviewing and selection. In order to begin the interview and selection process, you'll need to navigate to the JobX system, either by following the URL above or simply typing in UNC Work Study to a Google browser and clicking the first link. Once you reach this page, you'll need to utilize the Work Study Supervisor link here to move to the Work Study Supervisor page. On this page, you'll navigate to your Job Management screen by clicking the Job Management login link on the far right top. This will prompt you for a verification setup in which you'll sign in with your ONYEN and password. Once you've been verified and entered into the system, you'll move to your Job Management screen. Once you've reached this point, you'll need to select your department from the drop-down list on the left in order to view applications and applicant data. Selecting your department will bring up this information. To review applicant information, simply click on the applicant link under the App Number column. The Review Application screen can be broken down into three parts: the Filter section, the Act section, and the View Data section. Filter data allows you to find individual students whom you've already identified. The Act data sends communications to the students on a variety of topics, and the View data contains all of the students' application information material. We'll mainly be working with the View data with some help from the Action menu. This presentation makes the assumption that you've already reviewed the candidates and found the person or persons whom you would like to interview for your position. If you've reached this phase, please proceed with the video. If not, please return to the previous video in this series on reviewing applicant data. In order to begin communicating with applicants and setting up interviews, you'll want to use the information contained on this Review Applicant screen. And, in conjunction with the action bar, you'll be able to communicate your interview information with these students. First, select the checkbox next to the student or students whom you would like to contact about an interview, and then click the Send Greeting button on the action bar. Doing so will set up a default email application through JobX, containing a pre-populated subject line and body text. Please note, you will need to update the body text to include information about how you will contact the candidate, such as your email, phone number, times for the interview, and options for setting up further discussion. Once you've customized the subject and body of the email, you will then click the Send button to have the email sent to the student in question. Once you've set up a time for the student, you'll begin to conduct the interview process. The purpose of the interview process is to determine whether the candidate and you are a good fit for each other and whether the candidate will be able to carry out the duties and responsibilities of the position. Please note, interviews are required for new hires and returning hires who are moving to substantially new positions. Interviews are optional for students who are returning to the same position in a subsequent year or who are working in a position with substantially similar duties. The UNC Work Study program allows virtually any format for interviewing, including in-person, telephone, internet, FaceTime, Skype, or any other method acceptable to both parties. Please note that as students are often interviewed before the beginning of school, in-person interviews are often an issue, prompting most supervisors to utilize telephone or an internet-based means of communication for their interviewing. If you need assistance developing an interview, you'll find many resources on the Supervisor Resources page in JobX, previously discussed in this presentation. Three specific resources to be aware of are the Interview Process Development Guide, which turns your job posting into a complimentary and thorough interview, the Interview Question Do's and Don'ts, containing topics that cannot be discussed during interviews without violating federal employment regulations and law, and the Interview Comparison and Scoring Guide, an Excel spreadsheet to help you make sense of the outcome of your interviews and select the best candidate from your applicant pool. Interview protocols can be broken down into three steps: 1. Creating the actual interview, 2. Creating an evaluation system, and 3. Scoring and selecting individual candidates and finding the best candidate or candidates after the end of the procedure. This information is contained here and broken down into subsequent steps and is discussed via graphics on the next slide section. In order to create an effective and meaningful interview process, supervisors will need to start with their job posting. Job posting should be reviewed for job duties, requirements, components, factors, knowledge, skills, abilities, and any other item which might lead to a job characteristic. Job characteristics can be thought of as those individual segments of the position for which a supervisor wants to screen during the interview process. These characteristics come from duties, skills, abilities, knowledge, and other factors, and can often be grouped into individual questions. Questions should each cover a job characteristic, and each job characteristic may be represented in one or multiple questions. These questions can then be reviewed for clarity and accuracy, improved through feedback and restatement, and then structured for an interview in a process flow. Supervisors needing assistance with this process should review the Supervisor Resources page on JobX for the Interview Development Guide. Once the interview is created, an evaluation system is necessary in order for supervisors to evaluate the results of said interview. Supervisors should list all of the characteristics they are utilizing during the interview process and evaluate them for importance. As seen on this graphic, supervisors have used percentages in line with their characteristics to develop importance. For example, characteristic 1 comprises about 10% of the job duties and therefore has been given a 10% score. Characteristic 2 is more important than characteristic 1 and comprises about 18% of the job duties and therefore has been given an analogous amount of 18%. This process is completed for each job characteristic. Once the weighted characteristics have been completed, a scoring system is then needed. Scoring systems can use any quantitative scale, but most often supervisors find the best use of the 1 through 5 Likert scale, in which a 3 is an average response, a 1 is a poor response, and a 5 is an outstanding response. Once the interview and the evaluation system has been constructed, the supervisor should move on to the scoring and selection process. During this process, each candidate is asked and scored each of the questions developed in the interview process. These scores are then correlated with the category weights from the evaluation system and multiplied, giving a section score for each job characteristic. These individual section scores can be accumulated together to produce a candidate final score. This final score for the candidate can then be compared to the final scores of other candidates. Please note, while a 2.83 may not be substantially worse than a 2.91 given individual responses and the characteristics of the applicant on that day in their responses, an overall score may be a representative example for comparison. In doing so, a final score of example 4.25 is almost certainly a better candidate for the position than a candidate with a score of 2.91. Interviewers can utilize these final scores to select candidate or candidates for the position and be used as a loose ranking system in determining quality of candidate comparisons. Thank you for reviewing this presentation in the Supervisor Primer series. If you would like more information or to see more videos in this series, please navigate to the URL shown below or Google UNC Work Study and click on the link in the middle of the page to go to the Supervisor Resources site. If you have any questions about this presentation or questions about the work study programs in general, please email Josh Leonard and Thomas Harper, the work study program staff, at work-study@unc.edu. Thank you and have a great day.